Hey everyone, it's Paul, and this is 2 Blocks from the White House. Happy Canada Day. Guess what we're talking about today? Trade. It's the deadline to review the Canada-U.S Mexico Free Trade Agreement. Full transparency. The deadline is July 1st, but this conversation was recorded June 30th. It's a great conversation nonetheless. Let's have a listen. Hey everyone.
Hey, Paul.
Happy Canada Day. Peter, happy Canada Day.
For Canada Day, I snuck in and stole Katie's keys to the podcast studio.
Quick quiz. How old are we, guys? I mean, not to you.
Me?
Not
Yeah,
you.
that's the first
Not
thing I
you.
thought.
The nation.
26, 1867.
Carry the 7.
Divided by... Well, I
How
give
old
up.
are we, Willie?
Well, my quick Google search, because I couldn't do the math. 159.
159.
There
Not
you
bad.
go. That's a solid record.
Yeah.
Full disclosure, we're taping this episode on Tuesday, the day before Canada Day.
Which is the day before NHL free agency? No. Oh, wait a second. It's the day before CUSMA renews, the deadline we've been talking breathlessly about for
Forever.
a year now.
And there is an argument to be made that Canadians perhaps care more about NHL free agency than CUSMA, but CUSMA is, of course, very important. This is the trilateral trade deal, which is, of course, up for mandatory review this year. And while Canada and Mexico would like to extend the agreement for 16 more years.
Look, it's so unclear what's going to happen here. I don't know what Trump's going to do. Nobody does. And the joy of this is we're in like a little time capsule. Everybody listening to this probably has a better sense of what Trump's going to do than we will. Will it be this much talked about blow-by of a deadline? We don't know yet.
And we are very thankful to have you, CBC senior business correspondent Peter Armstrong, here in D.C. with us to explain everything. Clearly, you did not get the dress code memo.
I'm going to loosen my
there
tie.
you go.
There we go.
There you go.
Just for you. I feel better now. I feel better already.
Gosh, we've set the bar very low for this episode. And with the impact of a trade war set off by Trump's tariffs still being felt, there's a lot at stake for everyone, in truth. So on this week's episode, we're asking, what happens after the July 1st CUSMA deadline? I'm Paul Hunter.
I'm Peter Armstrong.
And I'm Willy Lowry. We're CBC's Washington correspondents, 2 blocks from the White House.
All right. Willie, as you're saying, we're lucky enough to have Peter here, who's an expert in all things cross-border trade. So, of course, I'm going to throw the first question your way, Willie.
Only natural.
Only natural. So we've got the deadline. Before we get to that and all the sort of potential fallout from this July 1st deadline, where are we at right now? What is I'll leave it to you to explain to everyone the current state of the talks.
Lucky me. I think in one of our earliest podcasts, we described the relationship between the U.S. and Canada as complicated. I think that could be, again, used to characterize the current talks. But here's what's important. They're actually happening, right? And there was a period in time where they weren't. So Dominic LeBlanc, of course, our Canada-U.S. trade minister, has met multiple times just in the month of June with Jamieson Greer, the U.S. trade rep. They met on June 2nd and again on June 16th on the sidelines of the G7 in France. And they've also held some technical talks. All of that bodes, if not well, certainly better than where we were at several months ago.
We had the comments from Pete Hoekstra, the U.S. ambassador to Canada the other day, saying things are nowhere near the finish line. But I found it interesting what Mark Carney said. I think it was last week.
What I have seen with the president is that you're not close to make a deal and then you make a deal. I've seen that in different cases. It doesn't mean the deals are good deals, but it means being prepared, having done the work, knowing what you want. So both things can be true.
I was hosting Cross Country Checkup on CBC Radio on the weekend, and one of our guests was Erin O'Toole, a former Conservative Party of Canada leader, and who's also now in Mark Carney's advisory committee when it comes to this. And he said, I think he put it rightly when he said Trump is the wild card, right? And even Carney was, I think, talking about how it's going to ultimately, obviously, but this is at the point where it takes the 2 leaders to sign off on something at this point. But by calling him a wild card, that underlines all of it, right? Because there's, as we've said so many times on this podcast and in any of our coverage, you just don't know with Donald Trump, right? And he's so mercurial. Aaron O'Toole was saying that, there are times when it seems like he understands the value of the U.S.-Canada trade relationship, and then the next day he's derisive about it.
Sometimes it's
sometimes in the same breath. No, exactly, and that's
But he
the
keeps
complicated part, to use that word again.
For sure, and he keeps his own administration on their toes. They often don't know which way he's going to land on any given decision. But this review has inspired months of breathless coverage. What do people need to understand about what happens after July 1st, this July 1st CUSMA deadline, Peter?
I think this is really important, and I'm not entirely sure how much this has been absorbed in the conversation, but July 1st is going to come, and it's going to go, and nobody expects there to be a deal. And you know what happens to CUSMA or USMCA or free trade? And nothing. It just keeps rolling on.
Podcast over?
Pretty much, right? And I think it's like the deal will expire on July 1st of 2036. And it's really important to recognize that what this is, like I went through the actual text of USMCA to find, what are we talking about here? How is this governed?
And this is why you're here.
This is why I've come down, is to try to get my head around what is actually happening.
The
what
rest
matters?
Of the podcast is
how is this
Peter
playing
Armstrong.
out? Yeah, I'm just gonna read the entire text. 2,000 pages of USMCA coming to you fully. But it says, as part of this 6-year review, if the parties don't confirm they wish to extend the term of the agreement for another 16 years, the Commission shall meet to conduct a joint review every year for the remainder of the term of the agreement. That's it. That is the sentence that governs everything that we've been talking about leading up to this. And in a way, it sort of ends all of that and moves us into the next chapter, which is trying to figure out what we're actually going to do. Because the deadline's going to come and the deadline's going to go. It's not going to change the deal.
But isn't there a consequence in the sense of uncertainty? And so for any organization or company in any industry that wants to plan, make long-term decisions that affect everything that it does is effectively on pause. Like nobody knows where this is going to end up for all that stretch of time. You're right, I think everybody agrees. Like, in a sense, nothing changes, but that's sort of the problem, isn't it?
And does that hurt Canada the most?
It probably hurts Canada the most. It might hurt Mexico almost as much. But don't lose sight of the fact that it hurts America as well. And one of the things I'm trying to do while I'm down here is speak to American businesses about how much this is hurting them. This uncertainty, like if you were a company and you needed to buy a new fleet of trucks or you needed to invest in a new warehouse, whether you're in Mexico, Canada, or the U.S., and if your business is trilateral and moving across, like a lot of businesses are you really going to build that thing now or buy all those trucks now? Is now the time? Or would you go to your board and say, you know what, let's just hold on. Let's just wait and see how this plays out. Maybe things are going to change a little bit for the better. Maybe they'll change for the worse, but let's wait and see. And so that waiting and seeing is having very real impacts, as well as the cost of the tariffs. I mean, the auto industry is spending $2 or $3 billion a year on aluminum tariffs alone, right? So all of that uncertainty, all of that hit.
Welcome to Ask Me Anything on CUSMA with the CBC's Peter Armstrong.
Just to wind up to it.
Can I ask one of those? Ask Me Anything. I wonder if you talk about the business perspective. Taking a pause, waiting to see what approach to take. Is that not perhaps the kind of approach that either the Carney government or the Mexican government is going to try and take to all of this? There's only 2 more years of Trump. Or is that too long a time?
I think that's probably, the businesses tell me that's too long of a time. The businesses I talk to say they still believe there will be a deal. And if you look at what Trump has said, and you look at what Greer has said, and you look at what but almost every business that spoke to the USTR hearings about the state of USMCA here in America told the government, we want this deal to be extended. They want to have some add-ons to it. Janice Charette, the Canadian negotiator, has talked about them as like little Lego pieces that you can tack on to the existing agreement. But like Jameson Greer, I got a quote here where he talked about those Lego pieces and said, they would be layered on top of the existing USMCA, what he called the load-bearing pillars of USMCA. And he said, they work out okay. And if we get rid of them, then I just have to go back and do it all over again. This agreement that I was reading from is 2,000 pages long. It governs $2 trillion in trade every year. And it has been a success. Much as Donald Trump likes to yell about it, the trilateral trade is up 37% since the USMCA went into effect in 2020.
I was going to ask you to read some more of the trade agreement, but I'm just going to hold that.
Listen, I can. I've got sections highlighted. I'm good to go.
You raised the name Janice Charette, smarter than anybody at this table. She's Canada's chief trade negotiator to the United States. She has talked about all of the stuff that we've just been talking about here. Let's play a clip. Here's what she said back in April.
I think there's a lot of focus on July 1st, which is kind of a checkpoint. It's not a cliff. It's not, nothing. It's not determinative of the future of our trading relationship. The USMCA, the trading agreement, does remain in place. And I think just given, the number of issues on the plate of our friends in USTR who are doing deals around the world, as well as the importance of getting this right, I don't think we should expect, and Jameson Greer has said this, that necessarily we're going to have everything resolved with a bow ready to go by July the 1st.
And yet, we're all kind of freaked out about it all. Should we be or should we not? I guess that's the ultimate question, because you're right. I mean, how many headlines, how many newscasts, radio, everything has been said, here it comes, and here we are, and so?
And so it will continue. And I think the point that Willy was making earlier is these talks have been ongoing. We know they had the framework of a deal pretty much worked out last fall, and then that blew up. Maybe because of that Doug Ford, Ronald Reagan ad, maybe because of the auto industry. It's hard to tell exactly what happened on that front, but it blew up. But the underlying fact of that was that they had the broad sense of what they needed to sort of talk about. The options now are pretty clear. When Donald Trump was coming home from the G7, he said, in one sentence, right? Paul, you were talking about how one day to the next, he contradicts himself. Here it was, he got off the plane, and it was Josh Wingrove from Bloomberg, Canadian himself, was asking questions that I've been trying to get a sense from.
To me, I think it's better without it. I mean, to be honest with you, I'm not a big fan of it. I liked it because it got us out of NAFTA. In other words, after 6 years, you had a clause that got us out of NAFTA. That's the thing I liked about it most. We do better without an agreement.
Do you want to just leave it enrolling?
I would rather leave it unsigned. I'd rather have it terminated.
You'd rather have it terminated? Those are different things, sir. I just want to be clear.
I would rather not have the agreement, but I may sign it.
Can I just say that in a nutshell is also covering Donald Trump? Like, what is he saying there? Like, I don't think anybody understands.
The great thing that I think Josh did in that was say, you say that, but this is what will actually happen. And it was the first time in a year that there's been that level of detail in an exchange on this file that a lot of people that have been covering trade have been clamoring
But I still don't
for.
know where Trump landed on that.
Well, he landed in two places. He said, I would like to terminate it, which is the closest he's come to saying the U.S. would withdraw.
But he didn't.
But he didn't say it. And think of all the things that he has said about Canada, about Canadian sovereignty, about using economic force to take over the country. The one thing he hasn't come out and said is, I intend to withdraw from this agreement. But then he also said, maybe I'll sign it. Maybe that works out.
Can I interject?
You've got a look
Paul?
on your face.
I do,
Willy.
because so we just heard that. I don't like the agreement. I would rather leave it. Can we just listen to Trump when he actually signed the agreement?
Let's go back in time.
Today, we're finally ending the NAFTA nightmare and signing into law the brand new U.S. Mexico Canada Agreement. Very special. Very, very special. The USMCA is the largest, fairest, most balanced, and modern trade agreement ever achieved. There's never been anything like it. Other countries are now looking at it. This is a colossal victory for our farmers, ranchers, energy workers, factory workers, and American workers in all 50 states.
So what happened in the years since he said that?
Well, I'll tell you what happened in those 6 years. Since 2020, trilateral trade between Canada, U.S., and Mexico is up 37%. We're now at $1.99 trillion worth of trilateral trade moving in and out of Canada, the U.S., and Mexico. $380 billion in regional foreign direct investment. By any measure, by every measure, the USMCA has been an enormous success for Canadian businesses, for Mexican businesses, but primarily for American businesses. Scott Linscomb from the Cato Institute wrote a piece in Bloomberg leading up to this. And one of the quotes that will rattle around my brain for as long as this takes to get sorted out is, the agreement is simply too important to blow up, and Trump knows it.
Does he? He must. And yet here we are. This is the thing, right?
But
Trump, what does Trump want? He wants a stronger economy. He wants American jobs. That's what he
which is, I think, one
repeatedly says is behind all of this.
Yeah.
Bring the jobs
Exactly.
in any of the sectors to America, make Americans richer, to twist his phrase a little bit. And yet, here he is advocating. So, talk to lawmakers on Capitol Hill. They're all pro-USMCA CUSMA. It's like Trump is the outlier on this, and yet they're afraid to stand up to him and say, well, no, we need this.
It's almost as though CUSMA kind of goes against Trump's America First agenda, but fulfills his MAGA agenda, which is make America great again, right? This, for all intents and purposes, is a trade union that has been beneficial to the U.S., as you just alluded to. Yet, optically speaking, it kind of can be co-opted, I guess you could say, to look perhaps as though it's not America First, because it is aiding and benefiting not just the U.S., but Canada and Mexico too.
Do we know the answer to whether Trump can simply rip it up, or does he need congressional approval?
So we don't know the answer.
We don't know, I think, is the answer.
And I think if ever it happened, it would go to the Supreme Court, and they would have to decide, which is one of the reasons they want to do this as a side deal. They want these, we've talked about, the Americans talk about protocols, the Canadians talk about side letters. There might be a couple of side letters. There might be one global agreement. And they want to, as Jenna Charette frames it, is they want to have these like Lego pieces that they can attach on to what Jameson Greer calls the load-bearing pillars of USMCA, the stuff they do agree with. And I think it's important to just underline that. There are vast chunks of this 2,000-page document that even Trump and even Jameson Greer are like, yeah, that's good.
Are those pillars made out of steel?
Well, I think, look, that takes us to what do they actually want? And I think that's what's sort of hovering around this conversation. And if you go through it, and you go through it with even the Great Lakes governors, the stuff they want, once you get through the noise, most people agree on. They want better rules of origin, rules around stuff coming in from Mexico. What's an American part? What is Canadian steel? They want better, more clear rules around that. And frankly, I talked to the steel industry in Canada. They're not opposed to that. They want to get that done. It's how they've gone about it, and the threats and the vitriol and the tariffs and the everything else that have made it so fraught. But it also roots it back down to what is the actual deal that's in place here? And for all of the uncertainty that this has caused, what has built up is this pent-up money that's sitting on the sideline waiting to be unleashed. And as soon as there is some kind of a deal, it doesn't even have to be a perfect deal. Maybe a little bit of tariffs, maybe like whatever this ends up looking like, is going to unleash a quite significant amount of investment into Canada, Mexico, and the United States. The kind of stimulus that Donald Trump is looking to get from the Federal Reserve in terms of interest rate cuts might come by signing an agreement on USMCA 2.0 that allows that money to unleash itself back into the North American economy.
So can we guess where this ends up? The tariffs on steel and the other sectors, they might come down a smidge. Carney said he's not going to sign a bad deal. He could have signed a bad deal a year ago or yesterday, not into signing a bad deal, but that these other ones, they're around for the long haul, are they not? Is that the conventional wisdom?
Because there is a general consensus, at least within the U.S., within the administration, that the tariffs are kind of here to stay. That's my understanding.
And increasingly, I'm hearing an acceptance of that in the business community, at some level. But I think the parameters of a deal, if you kind of squint into the lens, you can start to see it taking shape. I think the bigger question is, when will this happen? And a lot of people have been saying the lead up to this deadline, for lack of a better word, has been a chapter. Now that we're past it, we're into a new chapter that will allow for different kinds of conversations. And then there's all these other deadlines. You've got the Section 122 tariffs. There's just the 10% global tariff on everything, CUSMA exempt, of course. But that expires on July 24th. So there are new things that are coming in the road ahead that they're going to have to deal with. And some of them are going to be political. Some of them are going to be economic.
You know, all that we talk about, we began this by noting it's Canada Day. We're also a couple of days away from July 4th, America 250. Why don't we end this on your thoughts, both of you, on where the relationship between the two countries stands? As you know, as these talks have been going on, and here we are on the birthdays of the two countries?
Oh, I mean, I think I referenced it off the top. I think it's complicated. It's complicated in a way that is perhaps not unprecedented, but certainly has not been the norm of this relationship over the last 159 years. A reference again to our age.
You.
Thank
Way
you.
to go.
Thank you. And a lot of that complexity is centered around the very fact that this massive trade deal that has, been in existence in some sort for more than 3 decades is potentially in flux, that the U.S. president doesn't see the value of having that same kind of relationship that previous presidents have had with our country.
And yet I'm also, it's fun for me to come down here because I see my American friends and I talk to people just on the street and cab drivers and whatever. And I'm reminded how much I like Americans and how much Americans like Canada. And our countries, we've been through some stuff. I am reminded that in 1812, what would become Canadian soldiers marched down and burned the White House to the ground. And we got over that. And if we can get over that, I'm sure we can get over this. Like I say, it is such a huge part of not just our economic lives, but our cultural lives and our political lives and our friendships and our families that I'm really glad when I come down, I am reminded of not the enmity between our two countries, but the very deep and abiding love that exists between Canadians and Americans.
I'll flip that around and note that I was in Canada on the weekend, and one of the things that always strikes me when I'm back there, regard to the relationship between the two countries and how it's changed, is the resilience of the antipathy and the pushback against, I want to say against America, but really it's against Donald Trump. From most of, if not all, of the Canadians who came up to say stuff to me in person or on cross-country checkup, it is remarkable. And besides it being remarkable, I find the broader breakdown of the relationship just like sad, right? Like I have a lot of friends down here too, obviously, and I think Canadians and Americans are still, lockstep in many ways. We're cousins, but it's just sad, I think, in the eyes of many, what the relationship has become in the last year and a half, and that's unfortunate. I'll say one last thing about the free trade talks. I think one overarching aspect that I've come to understand from people in the various rooms is that at the end of the day, Trump has to be seen in his eyes to win. And how to make that happen when both sides or all three sides actually win. The truth is, Trump has to believe that he won, and that's how you end up with a deal. We'll see. All right, great discussion. Just an update to a story we covered last week. On Tuesday, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled against Donald Trump's executive order, speaking of his executive orders, limiting birthright citizenship. It would have denied citizenship to people born to parents who are in the U.S. without authorization or are in the U.S. legally but temporarily. Such as people on a work or student visa.
And if you want to know more about the implications, listen to last week's episode on your favorite podcasting app.
All right, let's take, as we close out, an audience question. This one from Graham Pass. He asks, quote, mugs, where are the mugs? He says, Katie posted a pic on Insta of her and Paul, me. There was a 2 blocks from the White House mug. Where can I get one?
Well, Paul will be too modest to tell you this, folks, but the mugs are all Paul. They are his design.
Well, CBC art department, I think, created the logo.
But Paul,
I did make the mugs.
But Paul managed to use some sort of software to plaster our logo onto these mugs. There's a lot of back and forth with him and the machine to decide how much spacing to give it, the borders.
It's a side hustle. It's a side hustle of mine.
All of it is to say he did an exceptional job, and perhaps even more than our first episode, once we got the mugs, it really did feel like 2 blocks from the White House was real. So thank you, Paul. And does Peter get one? Or?
You're welcome.
Did I earn my mug?
He might have earned a mug.
Can I keep this one?
I think we should forward this conversation to the CBC merch department. They can come up with some. And I think to Graham Pass, Graham, if you, maybe I'll flip you an email. And since you asked, you never know what might turn up in your mail.
For $75.99.
Listen, thanks to Grain Pass for sending us that question.
And if you have something that you'd like to ask or feedback about what you're hearing, send an email to WashingtonPod, all one word, at CBC.ca. That's WashingtonPod at CBC.ca. Or leave a comment for us on Spotify.
And hey, if you like what you're hearing, spread the word. Tell a friend about this podcast and follow us on your favorite podcasting app so you never miss an episode.
All right, that's all for today. Thanks to you too. Thanks, Peter, for
Thanks for having me, guys.
Katie.
This is a highlight.
See you next time.
See you next time. Happy Canada Day.
Yep.
Happy Canada.
Same.